Welcome, everybody. We're having another episode of DLC today. It's going to be a bit of a free-for-all here, where we're going to be discussing all sorts of different composers. We're not going to be playing any specific music and listening to it directly. We're just going to be talking about the composers, and you'll be listening to music in the background. Today, we've got 3 guests, and then myself as the quote-unquote host of the show. Again, my name is Silent Martyr Spencer, and then we have, as usual, Brian.
Hello!
We have Veroni.
Howdy.
And we also have a, not new, but a longtime guest, Gabe.
Hey, they dusted me off. I'm back, baby.
Always good to have a returning guest.
Hook you out of mothballs.
Yes. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And like I said, this is a bit of a free-for-all. So we're not having any specific genre of music or any games. There's a little bit of an RPG lean, but because we're, a lot of music that comes out of the game industry, the good stuff is RPG based, but we're going to be bouncing around to a bunch of different stuff. So there's a lot to get to, so let's get to it. I think we have Gabe who's going to be starting out.
All right. Hello. For my first music section here, I picked the Capcom Sound Team, kind of just in general, because their music over my whole life practically has been so formative. Like my very first RPG, as you were talking about, was Breath of Fire, and the Breath of Fire series in general has a very special place in my heart. This is going to kind of set the pace as well, because Yoko Shimomura, who we're going to be talking about more in depth later, did some work with the Capcom Sound Team. She only did one song, I believe, on Breath of Fire, which was Trade City, which I didn't bring to focus on today, but just want to throw that in there as well, again, to set up for later. She ultimately said, hey, I'm gonna leave and go to Square Enix so I can do more work on RPGs, because you're keeping me mostly on like fighting games like Street Fighter 2 and things like that. But she was a really classic, a really key part of the Capcom Sound Team, but so many other folks over the years contributed to just some really, really formative songs and soundtracks. So as you can imagine, was sort of a rotating cast of composers working on different projects within Capcom's stable of titles. But for our purposes, for the ones that I brought, for Breath of Fire 1, you have Yasuaki Fujita, Mari Yamaguchi, Minai Fuji, Yoko Shimomura, of course, for the one song I mentioned, for Trade City, Tatsuya Nishimura. You have them on Breath of Fire 1, Yoko Shimomura also, of course, on the Street Fighter 2 soundtrack. Breath of Fire 2, you had Yuko Takehara as the primary composer. Mega Man X, this is where you really have a collaborative effort to pull that off. It's led by Setsuo Yamamoto, but you've also got Makoto Tomozawa, Yuki Sato Iwai, Yuko Takehara, and Toshihiko Kiri Horiyama. Then for Gyakuten Saiban, which I'll be talking about in a couple minutes, the Ace Attorney games, you have Masakazu Sugimori and Akemi Kimura. And the Okami soundtrack was Yoshinobu Takashita. Yeah, like I said, wanted to showcase a little bit of the Breath of Fire series because that's one of my all-time favorite series. So we've got the original battle theme, which will still just weave its way right into my head at any given moment, even 30 years later. We've got the light dragon theme, which has some really, talking about like the early video game music complexity, the fact that it builds from just sort of like a sense of foreboding and then adds all these interesting layers and instruments into it, just sort of always caught my attention all the way back then. But that's gonna catch my breath for a second. Anyone else have any experience with the Breath of Fire series?
Yeah, it's probably so while I will not pretend that I've kept up to date on more modern things in the series, Breath of Fire's 1 and 2 were right alongside Final Fantasies 4 and 6 as like these are some of the defining games of my childhood.
Yeah.
And the music is absolutely part of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and like Breath of Fire. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say actually a question for you.
Yeah.
Or less a question for me, but more for the people who are listening who may not be super familiar. Can you name some some of the games that Capcom Sound Team has worked on that people would be familiar with? Because some people may not. It's not quite as easy to place as the name of a specific composer.
Right. Yeah. So as mentioned, the Breath of Fire series, the Street Fighter 2. Basically, all the Street Fighters. It's interesting, the state of sort of like video game music preservation and all of that online. Some publishers, it's easier to find the individual composers, and sometimes you look up the soundtrack and it's literally just listed as Nintendo or Capcom Sound Team. As far as I know, they've done a decent job of, going back and saying, okay, like Breath of Fire 4 was Yoshino Aoki. Actually, Breath of Fire 3 also was. But then you got like Mega Man X, which another like extraordinarily formative album for me. I really wanted to showcase there because it's the composers on that sound team, and I think there were only 3 or 4 folks with one primary, and I wish I had that information in front of me, the name of the primary composer. I had it earlier. Anyway, it was a much more like metal inspired soundtrack, and to hear a sound team put together a metal soundtrack on the Super Nintendo's sound kit is pretty wild. But then you've also got like Okami, which I mentioned, or I brought the Cursed Shinshu Field piano arrangement for Okami to share with you, and the Gyakuten Saiban, also better known as the Ace Attorney series, is just full of really fantastic music from, when you're in the middle of your trial and suddenly you're backed into a corner and the music swells and you feel, I could really mess this up. Part of why I wanted.
Don't forget, they also did the Mega Man franchise.
Yeah,
Another one that has
the
super
original
iconic music.
Yeah, the original Mega Man as well. Yeah, I focused on Mega Man X specifically just because I didn't really grow up playing the non-X series, but yeah, I know there are a ton of fantastic songs in the regular Mega Man series as well. But to sort of wrap up my sort of section, or the last thing that I really wanted to say about Capcom is a couple of the songs toward the end here. "Get Through the Dark" by Alf Lyla. That's Capcom Sound Team's like in-house band, named after the Arabic term, or the Arabic title of the Arabian Nights, 1001 nights or whatnot. In Arabic, it basically translates into Japanese as Alf Lyla, and they did this whole like acid jazz rearrangement of the Mega Man X soundtrack, and they call it Rockman X, and it's just this really, if you know the soundtrack, it's a very rewarding listen to hear this re-envisioning of it. And then the Gyakuten Saiban track that I brought in was from their Ace Attorney meets Orchestra soundtrack. So the Capcom Sound Team seems, at least in my sort of read of it, to really like value their music more than some other sound teams or publishers who just say, here, you can have the playlist, I guess, if you want to. But Capcom seems to really celebrate it and release these like jazz arrangements and orchestral and piano arrangements and things like that you mostly kind of just see Capcom and Square doing. So I really wanted to highlight that. So
before we shift into our next contestant here, though, just want to add, it will always amaze me how composers, especially in the days before we got fully orchestrated soundtracks, how they managed to give us like some of our most well-remembered music through sound chips. Because you have the limitations of the NES and the Genesis and the Super Nintendo.
Quality music.
But you were still able to produce memorable music. The quick thing that pops into my head is like the mock opera voice you get in Final Fantasy VI for the Super Nintendo, which we joke about now, or at least I do. But to get these things that you heard when you were a kid or a young adult, and they stay lodged in your brain forever, and they still sound as good. Yeah, to an untrained ear, it's bleeps and bloops, but it's music. So,
what always got me was like how, when you're listening to it, and this is like very definitively for the '90s era systems, so like both the SNES era as well as the like PS1 era.
Yeah,
where like it's not like, sometimes the songs in the CDs were like full orchestrated, but like a lot of the time it was still like a style of chiptune. But like you're like hearing the song and you're thinking about like a real life instrument playing it more so than you're thinking of like a computer beeping and booping at you.
Yeah,
right.
It's just very like that's how I kind of gauge those soundtracks of those eras. Is like how well do they do of like truly mimicking like a real instrument based like song.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to open with the Capcom Sound Team, is because they were kind of, really on the cutting edge there of, like you listen to the Breath of Fire theme from Breath of Fire 2, that flute instrument is just going bonkers in the background, and it just, you get this grand sense that you would never expect to even be possible, and then to sort of chart the 90s to early 2000s through the Capcom Sound Team's development was really kind of what I wanted to sort of show, that progression there. So yeah, glad to share that, and very indebted to them in terms of my personal preference in gaming music and music in general. I mean, I've listened to the Breath of Fire and Mega Man X soundtracks so many times in my life. So.
Yeah, no, they're obviously iconic. Very few people who played Super Nintendo couldn't give you the riff of like Sigma 1. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's just some super iconic stuff that comes out of Capcom.
Yeah, and you got like Guile's theme goes with everything, if you've ever seen that on YouTube.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. Yep, we'll just slide right over and go into the next composer. So why don't you take over, Ronnie, and give us your first contestant on Name That Composer.
Okay, so here's V's first choice. I chose to talk about Takeharu Ishimoto. He is best known for his works on The World Ends With You, on the Kingdom Hearts series, on some of the Final Fantasy, specifically some of the extended universe stuff for Final Fantasy VII, and a variety of other smaller projects in the middle. I wanted to open with, what are all of your experiences with Ishimoto? Are you familiar with his work? Have you played any of his games?
Oh, dude, I have a stupid number of hours dedicated to Twelly, both the first DS title and then the Neo title on the Switch. Just the music is such a tone setter. I've never played a game that has such a real world feel to it through the music. Like, it's just such an interesting way to represent both the like character age and like the emotions of the moments, and it's done through vocal music, but it's not like pop vocal music in a sense where it's super fast a lot of the time. Like, there are some quick ones, but like it's just like there's a lot of different styles and varieties to it, and it's just really interesting to listen to.
Brian, Gabe, how about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I was so stoked when you put Ishimoto on here because, again, another, to talk about the different eras of video game music. The World Ends With You came out in 2007, and I probably put 100 hours into that game within like 2 weeks. It was nuts. It was like nothing I had ever encountered in a game soundtrack before. Just, as Spencer was saying, that sense of place that you get, from the hip hop infused, rock, vocalists, and it all is set in Shibuya, which is such a live and fluid sort of place, and the music really does a tremendous job capturing that. And another awesome soundtrack.
It's like before this game, Shibuya was already a very iconic part of the country and like well known to like just your general person. that is like even remotely aware of like Japanese culture. And then this game comes out and it just like feels like a magnifying glass. It just burns onto you, and it's just a big Shibuya brand magnifying glass, because it's just like the whole game permeates it so well, and the music makes that permeation just seamless because it's just so clean. Each scene, like each week that it like evolves the tracks, it's just so good.
How about you, Brian?
So I am not as familiar with him as I am with the other composers. So I have the least experience here. I think the only game that I know I have played that has some of their music in it is Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Now I know that is mostly Yoko Shimomura's baby, but I know he contributed a few pieces to
I was gonna say the song that I had chosen from Kingdom Hearts is specifically from Birth by Sleep.
Yes, so yeah, that is the extent of really my familiarity with it. I have not played The World Ends With You, which I know that is one of his bigger projects. So
yeah, and when I was looking, to talk about Birth by Sleep a little bit, which that's the one that I haven't played from the selection here. As I was looking down the soundtrack list, and it said, "Oh, this is Yoko Shimomura." Oh, I thought this was Takeharu Ishimoto. Then I looked closer at the metadata. This song was, according to it, it was written by or composed by Takeharu, and then performed by Yoko Shimomura. So I really like that sort of through line that we have here. Everyone's picked Yoko Shimomura, even across their different picks, because she's just such a titan of video game composing.
Well, it's kind of fun. I mean, we just from looking at what your picks are, and people will see as we continue onward. But so many of our picks are all tied together. So, like to give you an example, later on, I'm going to be talking about Masayoshi Soken. Well, the first game that Ishimoto ever composed, he did with Soken. Yoko Shimomura is a friend and fan of Ishimoto, and that's how he started doing stuff in Kingdom Hearts, because she wanted to collaborate with her friend. Like, a lot of these composers are all connected in ways you wouldn't expect, and like there are places where when I was trying to decide on which Kingdom Hearts song I was going to take for Ishimoto, I'd be looking through there and it'd be like, oh, all three of the composers worked on this song. All three of them worked on this song. Like, so much of this was so heavy in collaboration.
yes,
It's really rare to have like a singular composer anymore for like a true, like real, like not necessarily AAA budget, but just a AAA studio, so to speak. Usually don't, just because of the size and scope of albums now. Like it's rare for even a non-RPG to not have like 30, 40 tracks in their game, rather than like, when we were talking about Mega Man X, that's like 20 is like the whole soundtrack is like 20 tracks. So
yeah.
You have all the stories of composers in the old days, passing out, having to go to the hospital, getting ulcers. Like,
well, slow down. We'll get there. Slow down.
But one thing I did want to play off of from what you said earlier, Spencer, the vocals. So I traditionally do not like vocals in my video games. I find it distracting. A little bit of Gregorian chanting for the final boss, that's fine. You do you, Sephiroth. But vocals with lyrics always they traditionally take me out of a game. And The World Ends With You is what made me flip on that and changed my opinion. Because that music is so vital to that experience. That game is a mood, and that mood is in the visual style, in the gameplay style, and in the musical style. And it is that interblending of all of these different things that create this piece of art. And I feel like that's true of a lot of the stuff he's worked on. He is very much somebody who isn't creating unobtrusive tracks that are more of the orchestral in the back, sounds like it's a movie music. No. His music is punching you in the face and turning your head to look at that screen and go, you see what's going on there? Pay attention. And I love that. I really do.
There's nothing more satisfying than just having these tracks playing while you're just like smashing your DS touchpad with the stylus, trying to do whatever buttons you have equipped. It's so thematically perfect. It matches it so well.
Absolutely. I mean, the closest he's done to the more backgroundy musical movie style is the stuff that he did in the Final Fantasy series. He worked on the music for Before Crisis, Last Order, Crisis Core, a lot of the spin-off titles of the 7 compilation. In that case, he was trying to work within the thematic style that the games already had. But even then, I still feel like a lot of the more memorable tracks from those are the ones where he's allowed to be more lively, where he's able to adapt just a little bit further away from the traditional Final Fantasy VII music and give it a little bit of its own style. I guess that's what I appreciate the most out of Ishimoto, is just how clearly his stylistic influences come through in his music. And how that affects the gameplay, because the World Ends With You was absolutely goddamn designed with that kind of music in mind. And I'll leave off here. It would feel strange if this soundtrack was like a more traditional RPG soundtrack. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it seems like he can't really help himself. You know, he's also he has, you know, the band Sawa is one of the recurrent bands on the World Ends With You soundtrack, and that is he was a member of Sawa and part of another band as well. So like he's just like, I'm gonna bring my full self to the soundtrack whenever they let me, and we're all better for that, you know.
Absolutely. Unless anybody else has anything to say, I think I'm going to pass to the next member of our little party, and that's going to be Spencer. What you got for us, Spencer?
So I'm going to start with someone who isn't as iconic, I would say, as everybody that's been listed so far, but he's a cornerstone of Nintendo going forward as a composer. His name is Ryo Nagamatsu. He started out later in like Nintendo's sound department. He started out on the Wii, going through like a bunch of different styles of games, like Wii Play, Big Brain Academy, but he really sunk his teeth into Mario Kart, and that's where he started. He really got his like first ability to really show his stuff. And I really love Daisy Circuit from that game. It's a very upbeat track that brings a lot of energy in a way that isn't as intense as some of the other Mario Kart tracks in terms of how chaotic they are. It's a really interesting and I would say unique to the Wii take for that kind of music that you get there. And he's really talented with his ability to just like note selection. To me is really interesting with him. He's just really strong selector of like good like flowing music for what's going on in the scene that he's working on, because he doesn't get a lot of games to himself, so I imagine that's more difficult when you have like Mario Kart games have like so many different composers. It's a lot like the Capcom Sound Team, where it's tough to have your own resonating theme because you're getting so few, songs overall in comparison to the entirety of the soundtrack.
That makes sense. I particularly love his work because he did a lot of work on Splatoon 2.
Yes, that's like what he's really known for now. Like where his like future really lies in is based off the foundation that he made from the Splatoon games. I didn't include any in my playlist because I personally haven't played any of them, but his involvement makes me want to play them in a way that like other composers that I'll talk about later also do.
And I my only exposure to the Splatoon soundtrack is through Super Smash Bros. Playing on those stages and just hearing those songs go off, and now I have that sort of connection, you know, to Link Between Worlds. You brought the song from that and Mario Kart and Super Mario Galaxy and all of that. I'm like, okay, it makes sense now. No wonder. I'm listening along. I'm like, no wonder I'm enjoying this so much.
And much
really
like, keep going. Yeah.
Oh, you're good.
Sure. No, much like pretty much every Nintendo composer that has been a composer since Smash Brothers has been started, he's done a few arrangements for Smash Brothers, and sometimes it's like not even like for him specifically, it's not even games that he worked on. Like he did like a Skyward Sword song for Smash Brothers, so it's just so interesting how they'll just come in and get like 2 songs thrown at him and been like, I don't know if you worked on this or not, just do it, shut up.
Well, I think that kind of speaks to the sort of communal aspect of the Smash Brothers series. It's sort of like, here's an opportunity to cross-pollinate even more. You know, as we were talking earlier, a lot of these folks are friends or did work on, you know, several full soundtracks together, and then there's this opportunity for everyone to sort of collaborate on this big, massive project where everyone's got a little piece of everything else. And I really love that about the pretty close to 1,000 track playlist for Smash Brothers Ultimate. It's nuts.
Yeah, they go a little hard.
just a drop.
We mentioned it earlier, but I just gotta say, goddamn, A Link Between Worlds is one of my favorite Zelda games, and
oh my gosh, yeah,
not the smallest part of that. Like a heart, A Link Between Worlds. Give me more games like that, please.
It's so bad that that's gonna be stuck in purgatory on the 3DS because to me it's the best Zelda game, and part of why it's the best Zelda game is because the music is so good. It builds so well off of what the original Link to the Past game does, and just expands on it in a way that just like I was saying before, how you visualize the instruments playing the chiptune music, and like it's just like it does that, and it does that so well. You know, the track I selected, the Lorule Overworld, when you first go into Lorule and it starts that intro, it's very reminiscent of Link to the Past when you first go into the Dark World, when you finally have the Moonstone and don't transform into the bunny, and it's just like, here's the theme, and it slaps you, and you're just like, oh shit. Same feeling, Link Between Worlds
might have my favorite Zelda soundtrack, and this is who I have to thank for it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a big deal, because I don't know if you guys have heard, but Zelda soundtracks are generally on fire. Like, they're great.
Yeah, Koji Kondo does some pretty solid work, and to be able to, like, you know, outdo him is kind of nuts, to be fair. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, the Link to the Past soundtrack is super clean, but I personally prefer the newer versions. It's just it. I mean, we could do an episode on that game, honestly, and I think that's
really good. I was gonna say, don't worry, we'll get a remake of it in about 20 years.
Yeah, but it won't have the 3D, and like that game is the best use of the 3D in any 3DS game in my opinion. Like it takes the best advantage of it to me.
I don't disagree. Let's say I can't disagree with you because I can't see 3D images, so I have no reference point on how the 3D works.
Fair. Fair.
Something I wanted to add just a little bit. This thought keeps weaving in and out of my brain, but to talk about the Zelda Link Between Worlds soundtrack, and all that's able to be accomplished with the limited chipset that these composers are using in earlier game soundtrack scoring. I think some of the brilliance comes out of the limitations that they're using. I don't want to say that that there are fewer contemporary soundtracks that really reach out and grab me, because I specifically focused on some of those coming up later, but I feel like there's such a sameness to a huge amount of soundtracks these days where, okay, everyone has access to actual full orchestral sound, so then everything's just this orchestral wave, and it kind of like, a lot of times in my experience anyway, sort of just blends into the background and becomes something you're not supposed to think about. Whereas I think the intention in a lot of these soundtracks that have really stood the test of time has been to make them an integral part and give them a voice and a texture as part of the game. And I think some of that came out of that creativity, that inventiveness that was necessitated by how the hell are we going to make something that you can listen to over and over again without getting sick of. It's just endlessly impressive to me, I guess, is my point.
I mean, composers for indie for indie games, are looking back at using those old limitations for those old consoles. I mean, Jake Kaufman did an amazing job with Shovel Knight. It's like you can still do it. Like, not every game needs a fully orchestrated soundtrack. I mean, there is still plenty that can be done, when you impose those limitations.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly, and that's exactly what I'm sort of alluding to, is like it seems to be more of like a choice nowadays to say, okay, we're gonna make this soundtrack have its own voice, and sometimes it's like a throwback sound, and sometimes, but just sort of, they didn't have a choice back then. It was either that or it's going to be
right.
Just these reductive bleeps. So yeah, it's interesting to see how that legacy is carried forward, and a lot of it is in the indie space. And I know we have a few more of those lined up down the road in this episode.
Just a drop.
Yeah. We could spend an entire episode just talking about indie video game music, and we might do that at some point.
We might.
I wanted to also talk about his work on Super Mario Galaxy 2, because that soundtrack was split up between a few different people, but he does a really good job of maintaining the overall grandioseness of the Galaxy themes. I've always felt like out of all the Mario games, those Galaxy games soundtracks are just so much bigger and blown up in terms of how they're presented and the kind of music it is. And I always appreciated these kind of tracks in these games, not realizing each person individually working on them, and just looking through when I first found out about Ryo after playing Link Between Worlds, and just being like, holy crap, this guy has all these different clutch points that are just like, wow, 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 wow. And it's just so impressive to me that he can go through these different genres and just match the genre and what the genre is asking from him out of the music and keep that, but still have his own kind of flavor to it and not just kind of getting lost in the specificness of the soundtrack.
The Galaxy games have hands down the best soundtracks in all of Mario. Like, I don't know if anybody else will agree with me, but that's how I've always felt.
They're really good.
Yeah, I'm not fighting you on that.
They're really good.
They're gorgeous, and that they, that grandiosity that Spencer, you were saying a minute ago, contrasted with these really like beautiful, like intimate, close moments in the soundtrack, and then it swells back up again. There's a really lovely balance that it strikes, and it literally takes you to other worlds.
Hey. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have on Ryo. So unless anybody else has something that we didn't cover, I'm good to toss it over to Brian for his first submission.
All right. Well, I'm my first composer for this round here. We're going to be tying a bunch of threads together. We're going to be talking about collaboration and multiple genres and someone who is prolific and one of the few.
It's on the edge of our seats.
Yes, one of the few women on this list for this episode. It's Yoko Shimomura. Starting off as Gabriel mentioned at the top of the show with the Capcom Sound Team. Like my real first exposure to her music was Street Fighter 2. That was a game I played with my stepbrother for hours, and Ken's theme and Guile's theme will just be in my head forever.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yes, she wasn't at Capcom for long, but then she moved to Square, where she really her career really took off. Because we're talking about someone that can write in multiple genres. Like, okay, you go a little further, same console, Super Mario RPG, and if you've played that game, that's a very light-hearted game, and the music to match. Like, even the boss battles, even the combat themes are, light-hearted. They're not, like, heavy and dramatic. It's like, it's Mario. It's the Mushroom Kingdom. It is, it's not going to be, super heavy emotional stuff. But then we start to actually get into that, which leads into one of my favorite soundtracks for her, Paris.
Oh, I was gonna say, you already said. I was gonna say, can I take a guess? Is it Parasite?
It is Parasite Eve. That is one of my favorite games for the PS1. Like, talk about going from light, fluffy, Super Mario RPG to like science fiction / survival horror. This was Square's answer to Resident Evil, and it was just it's getting you have the mood of, okay, we have this scientific calamity that's going on in the middle of New York City on Christmas, and there's an opera component to it, but also there's a lot of electronica to the soundtrack. Like, my favorite pieces from that are the main theme from that game, which is very piano heavy, and also the final boss theme. And because the final boss theme in itself goes through multiple iterations as you fight each different form of the final boss. And because, I am myself a musician, I notice similarities and themes in Parasite Eve that carried over a little bit into Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, hey, look, it's Ishimoto's big collaborator in Kingdom Hearts.
How about that?
Besties!
Yay! We all know that a lot of the themes in Kingdom Hearts are rearrangements of already written Disney themes and Final Fantasy themes. But some of the themes, some of the music that is original for Kingdom Hearts that weren't arrangements, like the music in Hollow Bastion.
Yep.
I don't have a lot to say about Kingdom Hearts because I never played the series past the first one, but I wanted to make sure you talked about the original stuff because, like, the Destiny Islands theme, like,
yep,
right off the bat, dude, like, what a way to start that game out musically. Just, I was so impressed. Like, you know, the music was great throughout, but, you know, the game itself, whatever. But man, like, just so clean, like, so clean. And like you said, it's incredible how she goes from genre to genre to genre to genre and just not only does well, but she's literally setting foundations. Like Street Fighter 2 is a foundational soundtrack for the whole Street Fighter series.
Yes!
Super Mario RPG is the foundational soundtrack for all of the, like, Mario and Luigi Game Boy Advance games and, like, all the Paper Mario style soundtrack, like, just like a foundation of Mario soundtracks, and she did that too. And, like, you know, obviously Parasite Eve is like her like quote unquote niche one, but even still, just like wow.
Yeah.
You were saying so clean. Would you say simple and clean?
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, I had to do it. I know my role.
I was waiting for that. And you know, and Kingdom Hearts has been the series has largely been her baby. And then, you know, we jump. You know, she's so prolific. And then, you know, she was asked to do the soundtrack for Final Fantasy 15. Like, holy crap. This is how far, like, starting off as like a rookie, quote unquote, rookie composer with Capcom Sound Team. Now Square is asking her to write the music for a main entry Final Fantasy game. Like, put that in your resume.
Was that the first one without Nobuo, or was
no.
11?
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I'm forgetting. I like don't count 11 mentally because, like, that's different. But yeah, no, you're right. Okay.
So and, you know, somebody, I forget who mentioned it, but somebody mentioned that, you know, we're kind of now in an era of video game development where there's not a whole lot of games in which the music is assigned to just one composer. There's a lot more collaboration nowadays, but like Final Fantasy 15, she wrote the whole thing. There was no other like
all 3,000 tracks.
Yeah, she wrote the entire Final Fantasy 15, which, you know, that might be the first Final Fantasy since 9 that in which all the music was written by a single composer, because Nobuo wrote the first 9, 10 was Nobuo and a couple of others, and then it was collaborative from there. Well, 12 might have been written by a single composer, but anyway, she's just so prolific and just bouncing from genre to genre. Like some of the tracks that I specifically singled out for her, like I mentioned Kingdom Hearts, I mentioned Parasite Eve, dearly beloved, also from Kingdom Hearts. Just that is such a beautifully haunting piano melody that just sets the mood for the entire series. Like, okay then.
Yeah, just to have such a prolific composer that's been in the industry since the early days. I mean, we're very fortunate. And, you know, Final Fantasy 15, the last Final Fantasy game I really played was 10, but I have the soundtrack for 15, and every now and then I just pop it on, and eventually I was like, oh wait, this is the, you know, that was sort of part of why I made a point of including a little bit of Street Fighter in my section on the Capcom Sound Team, as well as, just knowing that there's this arc, that this one composer has just covered so many different worlds and territories and soundscapes in just with such an impressive level of mastery.
I know we're getting close to time on this one. I had a couple things I wanted to bring up, if you guys are okay with that, on this.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. One, I wanted to mention that one of the first things that she did in her first couple of years was she did the soundtrack for Little Nemo on the NES, which is probably it's not the first video game I ever played. It is absolutely not. I played several games before that. But it is the one that, if I think of playing games in my childhood, that's the goddamn game I think of. And the opening theme and the theme from the first level live rent-free in my goddamn head. And that is all her. So thank you for that, Ms. Shimomura. I want to mention Live Alive, which, while it is not super well known over here, it's slightly better known now, was super important. It inspired a ton of other composers through the varied work that she did in it. And the final one I want to mention was, so, y'all heard of Mario Rabbids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she is one of the 3 composers who worked on Sparks of Hope, alongside Grant Kirkhope and Gareth Coker. Gareth Coker being the Ori.
Yep.
The Ori guy.
The Ori guy.
Yeah, Ori, Arc, Halo, Infinite, just a whole bunch of just bangers. Grant Kirkhope kinda needs no introduction, but
The goat, dude. The watch theme alone, he's the goat.
Uh-huh. And then Yoko Shimomura, they got nothing but bangers for that goddamn game. Mario Rabbids needs to get more recognition. Dear God. This, what else are you supposed... Convinced the next Mario Rabbids game are gonna be like, so we're dropping it. The musicians this time are gonna be Nubio and Matsu. We're gonna be getting Koji Kondo. It's nothing but top tier work. It
has no business being in that game. None.
Exactly. Audience,
this game's gonna get a $50 million budget, and 45 of it is going to our composer.
Exactly. The audience, go out and play the Mario Rabbids games, both of them. You won't regret it. I know it's a ridiculous sounding premise, but it's amazing. Go do it. Okay, I'm done.
So if that wasn't a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is, ladies and gentlemen.
Jeez. All right. Well, that brings us to the completion of our first round of composers.
Yeah. Can I throw something in that I literally just found out? Is that apparently
breaking news?
According to Wikipedia, Brian, you mentioned that basically the Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack was all Shimomura-san.
Was I wrong?
According to Wikipedia, it has a little note that says with Tetsuya Shibata, Yoshino Aoki, and Yoshitaka Suzuki. But that was probably like a track or two. It's if you look down the track list, it basically all is just Yoko Shimomura. But I just wanted to shout this out because it's another connection. Because Breath of Fire 4, which Ronnie, you mentioned earlier, you'd only played 1 and 2. Breath of Fire 4 is one of my all-time favorite games, and 3 is also excellent. I
played 1, 2, and 3. I never played 4.
Yeah, 3 has this really funky soundtrack that was composed basically exclusively by Yoshino Aoki, and she also did Breath of Fire 4. and she collaborated apparently a little bit on Final Fantasy 15, which again though was basically exclusively Yoko Shimomura. But I just learned that little extra connection that I didn't know.
That little footnote. So there you go.
So yeah, well, with that we can go right back up to Gabe, and Gabe can present his second composer.
All right, y'all, are you ready for this one? Strap in, because if you're unfamiliar with the soundtrack to Lisa, the Lisa series, Lisa the First, Lisa the Painful, and Lisa the Joyful, I'm about to acquaint you with it, and it is definitely, to harken back to the World Ends With You, where we were talking about games where the soundtrack is so integral to the experience of the game.
Soundtracks that smash you in the face with their music, yes.
Yeah, I actually wrote a little. I was like, how the hell am I going to explain this? So I wrote a little 2-sentence summary, which does not do it justice, but sort of gets to the right ballpark. So here's what I wrote about this. At its core, Widdly to Diddly, that's the moniker of Austin Jurgensen, the developer and composer and writer and everything else of the Lisa series. Widdly to Diddly's music could maybe be summed up as chill lo-fi beats brined in battery acid. Equal parts abrasive and hooky, this singularly strange soundtrack features several profoundly expansive, ethereal numbers, hand in hand with in-your-face barn burners and tunnelingly bizarre electronic grooves, rounded out by haunting strains drenched in fear sweat, and genuinely funny tracks seemingly plucked from some otherworldly, carnivalistic hellscape. It's a blast. That's the biggest thing I can say about it. It is a wild ride. And for those of you who aren't familiar, you should.
The music is like Earthbound if Earthbound was very, very, very depressed.
Yeah, the tagline for the Lisa series or for Lisa the Painful, which is the main game, is the miserable journey of a broken man, and the final line in the game description is a life-ruining game experience. But you know what's not going to ruin your life? The soundtrack. It is really just such a bizarre encounter. But I'm glad you mentioned Earthbound, because I was just about to as well. Very, very clearly a huge influence on Widdly to Diddly, both in the soundtrack and in the game as a whole. I mean, there are characters in there that owe their design. Their designs are literally homages to characters, beloved characters from the Earthbound series as well. And it just, are any of you familiar? Have any of you played the series at all?
No, but just listening to this music, I definitely feel like very Moonside just hearing this.
Yeah, like again, I know Gabe, you personally have recommended this game to me. I have not played it, but in my prep for this episode, listening to the soundtracks that we all provided, I had a note next to the Lisa music, and I wrote down Earthbound in an incredibly minor key. So I'm glad we all got the Earthbound notes in there. And also I said slight transistor vibes, which that'll be my next composer when we get to me. But this there were some points where I was listening to this music and I'm going, just That's all. I couldn't articulate anything more besides that Earthbound in a minor key. But I'm listening to some of the music. I'm going, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, and I when I sent the list for the Lisa series, I threw a few more than I really was supposed to on there.
It's all right.
I said jump around, listen to a minute of each, because there's just no way of, like some soundtracks kind of, you can hear a few songs from it and you can say, yeah, I get it. Basically, the soundtrack is this. There are so many twists and turns on that soundtrack that just keep you guessing. Like I said, really beautiful moments, and then very much
what the
songs
fuck
that are meant to be hostile to you as a player and as a listener, because that is very much part of the texture of the game as well.
So you were asking if any of us had any familiarity with the series. Yes. I have played the first Lisa. I have read Wikipedia entries for the other two, because the first Lisa, the music is amazing. It's how I feel about the horror movie Hereditary. Yes, it is a masterpiece. It is also despair porn, and that is not the kind of thing that I enjoy.
Yeah.
It is absolutely amazing for what it is. It's just what it is may not be to everyone's taste.
Yeah, that's definitely very good to mention. And I will say that Lisa the First has that's the one that I haven't played. That's the one that is most overtly dealing with sexual abuse and a lot of traumatic things. I mean, the whole series is delving right into trauma and abuse and awful things like that. But I believe, from my understanding of it, the first is the one that is the most unrelenting and the most hostile to you as the player, whereas the painful and the joyful, they have a different engine that they're running on, so it's not the same kind of traversal or anything like that. And there is a much lighter tone despite the insanity. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is very, it's like, read every content notice about it if you feel like, oh yeah, I want to check this out. And if you say, yeah, maybe not, then at least you have the soundtrack.
I will also bring up, so we mentioned it has been stated that it's inspired by Earthbound, and it is. It was also inspired by two other games. It was inspired by Yume Nikki as well, and you can hear that in some of the music. And third, and it's part of why I brought it up earlier, it was inspired by Live Alive.
Yeah.
And that's going to come up a couple times in all of this.
Damn it, Yoko, you're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just inspiring shit everywhere we go.
We had to throw in a few legends in here. We had to, so
Yeah. This is secretly the Yoko Shimomura tribute episode. Just celebration.
Just wait. You'll hold on.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
Hold on.
Yeah. But that's basically all I have to say about it. I hope you listen to some of the tracks on here and just say, what? Because that's kind of the point. It's like no other soundtrack I've ever heard, and I've listened to it so many times. So it was easily my first lock for this show.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we can believe with that we can slide into Ronnie's second submission.
Oh, for my second submission, we're going to talk about a young composer who was also inspired by Live Alive soundtrack directly to get into composing, and eventually into video game development. We're going to be talking about Mr. Toby Fox,
Ah!
an internet darling. So, as I did before, let's go around. What is everyone's familiar of before I do that, to people who may not know who Toby Fox is, because I am biased and just assume everyone knows him. He is the person who both created, composed, and did almost everything for Undertale. Yes, he is. Sans Undertale is his fault. You're welcome. He also did Deltarune, as you would expect, the pseudo-sequel to Undertale. But he's done more than just those. He worked on Pokemon, both a little bit. He did a song for Sword and Shield, but he did several songs for Scarlet and Violet, one of which gave the primary leitmotif for the game that kept getting remixed over and over again. He has done, like, quite a few, like, little titles that you may not expect outside of what he is most famous for. So, what is all of your familiarity with Mr. Fox?
The fantastic Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Well, I have played and beaten Undertale, so I do enjoy the soundtrack to Undertale.
Well, there's one.
Yeah.
How about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those instances. I was like, man, Ronnie's really got my number because, Takeharu Ishimoto earlier, and then Toby Fox. Those were two that were on my list, and I had to prioritize, the other ones for reasons that I've already gone into and will continue to go into. But I mean, yeah, the Undertale soundtrack, and the game itself. I mean, there's a reason it's a internet darling. It's worth the acclaim that it's received, and yeah, I was delighted to say, yeah, we're gonna visit my old friend Toby here, with your pick. So that's my primary exposure there.
For me personally, I never have gotten a chance to play Undertale, so I always try to avoid listening about games that I will probably play, and because this game is a staple Earthbound, progeny, so to speak, like I do want to play this, and it definitely is a title that I feel like I will eventually get to, but I am in no rush to do because it's so popular. I don't feel like there's going to be a point in the zeitgeist when it's out of people's minds. But my personal time with Toby is in Scarlet and Violet, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite overall Pokemon soundtracks.
It slaps. Like,
it's so good because I really like the direction that Sword and Shield went in, and I feel like Scarlet and Violet just completely overtook that and just went way beyond. I'm going to be talking about Scarlet and Violet as well in a bit, but Toby's work in that game, I'm all right, that. To be completely fair, Toby's work in Scarlet and Violet has made me more interested in playing Undertale because I'm all right, this guy's doing good stuff, and it's not just the one game.
Right. And the speaking of doing good stuff, and obviously I should mention I've also played all the Pokemon games, so I certainly have that familiarity as well. But yeah, what was I gonna say? Sorry. The first thing Toby Fox ever did was an Earthbound ROM hack that he directed, wrote, and composed music for. So again, there's not only that Live Alive connection, but also that Earthbound connection. So it kind of Undertale and Toby Fox and Austin Jurgensen for Lisa, both owe very large debts to Earthbound and Live Alive.
Earthbound is so criminally underrated considering how influential it is to like literally indie gaming. It's insane. It's insane. It's just insane to me, but go on.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say, you know, when I heard you were picking Toby Fox, the biggest question I had was, all right, what are the song choices going to be? Because there's the obvious one that everyone knows, Megalovania. I feel like, you know, everyone who's even remotely familiar with the series anyway knows Megalovania. So that's like the thing that I didn't want to see picked, and I was delighted to see the songs you did pick, you know, just to say, oh, there are so many great tracks in Toby Fox's sort of oeuvre, I guess you'd say, that I like more than Megalovania, which is a great song. But then, you know, that's just like one note. You know, it's very bombastic, and Toby Fox does that tremendously well. But there's so much more depth to the Undertale soundtrack and to all the other work that he does, that I think people maybe don't always recognize if all they ever hear is Megalovania. So
It's Megalovania is exactly what it needed to be for that moment. And that's how I feel like that's what's so great about the soundtrack, is each song is what it needs to be, and nothing more and nothing less. So I completely understand people who think Megalovania is their favorite song from Undertale. It's a banger.
Yeah.
But Undertale is filled with bangers. His theme has been my alarm to wake up for goddamn since like a year after Undertale came out. Like, so much of his music just is exactly what it needs to be to set the stage for. I mean, it's one thing about when you have a developer who's also the composer, who's also the artist. They don't need to collaborate with someone else to make all of this stuff work in harmony. They're designing everything from that harmony at its base, where they're taking each of these things and molding everything around it to make the most compelling scenario as possible, depending on where you are in a game. And the music is a key part of that. I get emotional listening to some of these songs whenever I hear them, and I don't get emotional that often. So it is amazing the power that music actually still has. One thing I really want to talk about, I feel like I would be doing a disservice to Mr. Radiation to not mention it. His use of leitmotif and melodies that recur throughout his games to tie characters and situations together is second to none. It has literally been said that is what got Nintendo interested in him. The way that he could write these simple leitmotifs that were reminiscent of what they would do back in the NES days, that would just live in your brain and that could get reused and manipulated and changed, but still retain that feeling as you do different things over and over again, which is very much what they do with Zelda, what they do with Mario, what they do with a bunch of stuff. And that is how he got scouted to do stuff in Pokemon. And I think that's like that at the heart of his work is connection. That's what the reusing the melodies and leitmotifs is. It is connection between songs and between music and between emotion.
Yeah.
I've said a lot. Do you guys have thoughts on this?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna agree wholeheartedly about the leitmotifs and all of that, and again, to make sort of a connection to Widdly to Diddly, not to really hammer that point over the head too much, but just that's another thing that I think they share in terms of their skill of sort of weaving certain melodies that just keep recurring in different contexts and tones in ways that you don't hear so often in a lot of other I mean, it's the signature of a really good soundtrack, and it is indicative of the level of study that they both put into when they were figuring out how they wanted to compose for their work. Okay, this is what one of these soundtracks really needs to go full tilt. They both did such a tremendous job of that, and to put it in a time frame, the Lisa, the Painful, and Undertale were being developed basically at the same time in the 2014-2015 sort of window. So something was in the air there, and it just really, it really brings you in so much deeper when you hear like certain notes from a character that you haven't seen in a while when you're playing, and you just know they're gonna come around the corner, and there they are. It really, as you said, top-notch use of that technique.
Before we move on, I just want to rapid fire off that Toby has done a lot of 1 or 2 off songs because he has been invited to a bunch of things. He did some stuff for Little Town Hero. He collaborated with Toho. He did a song for Amori. He's done stuff in Smash. He did some stuff in Smash Ultimate. Notoriously, he started with Homestuck. He even has worked with frickin' HoloLive characters doing songs for them to perform. The man can be found nearly anywhere, and I will not be shocked regardless of where he shows up. He could be doing a song in the next Final Fantasy, and I would not be shocked.
I'm looking forward to him doing more Pokemon work. I hope he gets some stuff in the Legends game coming out this year. I'm really hoping he gets some stuff.
100%. If he just becomes he just does a couple songs for each Pokemon title that comes out, I will be completely okay with that. Just keep giving that man some more.
That's kind of like what Uematsu. That's what Uematsu does now. It's like, Square, you're doing another Final Fantasy game. Oh yeah, here's a song or two. You're fine.
He's like Stephen King. He's just like, I got like 50 fucking books in my basement. Here, have one.
Have one.
Dude, get off my back, old man.
Speaking about putting people to work, I'm putting Spencer to work, going to our next composer.
Well, I feel like as we're hitting the halfway point here, this is probably a good break time to let us catch our breaths.
Yep.
And
good point.
Get ourselves ready for the next wave where I know I'm going to be personally bringing some serious bangers your guys' way. I hope I don't know if you're ready for them, to be honest with you. So we'll see. But hopefully you'll be back with us when we're back.